After a luxury corporate gala, she was pregnant by the billionaire CEO. Then he avoided her publicly. Hadley Pierce was 27 and invisible by design. She'd been working as an administrative analyst at Shaw Digital Systems for 3 years, occupying a cubicle on the 14th floor of the glass tower on Market Street, right where the financial district bled into Soma. Her desk faced a window that looked out at the Bay Bridge when the fog cleared, which wasn't often. Most days it was just grey, the kind of grey that made you forget what month it was. She lived alone in a one-bedroom walk-up in No Valley, the kind of place with hardwood floors that creaked and a radiator that clanked every time the heat kicked on. The building was old, built sometime in the 20s, back when San Francisco still felt like a real city instead of a tech campus. Her neighbors were mostly older, a retired teacher, a couple who lived there since the 80s, a guy who worked nights, and she only ever saw taking out his trash at odd hours. Hadley's life was small and predictable. She liked it that way. Coffee from the same cart on the corner of 24th and Noe every morning. The 33 bus that was always late. Lunch at her desk, home by 6:30. Weekends spent reading or walking to Dolores Park when the sun actually showed up. She didn't date much, didn't go out much, kept her head down at work and her headphones in on the commute. People at the office knew her as competent, quiet, the kind of person who got things done without needing recognition. She learned a long time ago that being unremarkable was safer than being seen. Except Declan Shaw saw her anyway. She didn't know when it started. Maybe it was the budget meeting in June when he'd asked her a direct question and actually waited for her full answer, instead of cutting her off like most executives did. Maybe it was the morning she'd been standing in the break room, waiting for the coffee to finish brewing, and he'd walked in, stood next to her without saying anything, just waited too. The silence hadn't been awkward. It had been something else. Or maybe it was all the times she'd felt his eyes on her during presentations, across the conference table, in the elevator when other people were talking, and he was just looking. Declan Shaw was 40, which she knew from the company website. CEO and founder, self-made, which was the word people used when they meant he'd gotten lucky with venture capital at the right moment in 2015 and hadn't screwed it up. He drove an Audi, dark grey. She'd seen it in the executive parking garage once, when she'd had to drop off documents after hours. He wore suits that fit the way expensive suits were supposed to fit, dark and clean, nothing flashy. His hair was starting to grey at the temples. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with the kind of presence that made rooms go quiet when he walked in. He was careful, controlled, the kind of man who didn't make mistakes, except he kept looking at her, and she kept looking back. The annual gala was mandatory for senior staff and select contributors, which apparently included her this year. She'd gotten the email in September, the kind of corporate communication that was phrased like an invitation, but absolutely wasn't optional. Black tie. Hotel Vitale, the one right on the Embarcadero with the water views and the rooms that cost more per night than her monthly rent. Hadley almost didn't go. She bought a dress at Nordstrom Rack. Black, simple, nothing that would make her stand out. Spent an hour on her makeup, which she never wore to work and felt ridiculous the entire time. She took a lift because the bus didn't run that late, and she wasn't about to show up sweaty from walking in heels. The gala was exactly what she expected. Too many people, too much noise, champagne she didn't want, appetizers on trays that servers kept offering like she couldn't see them herself. The ballroom had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bay, the bridge lit up in the distance, fog rolling in like it always did after dark. She found a spot near the back by the bar, nursing a glass of wine she wasn't drinking. Watched the executives network, the senior managers laugh too loud, the admins cluster together like they were all thinking the same thing, that they'd rather be literally anywhere else. She was good at this, being present but not participating, visible but forgettable. Then Declan appeared next to her. Not walked up, not approached, just appeared like he'd been standing there the whole time, and she'd only just noticed. "You hate this," he said, not a question. Hadley glanced at him. He wasn't looking at her, just staring out at the bay, hands in his pockets. His tie was loosened slightly, the only sign that maybe he hated this too. "I don't hate it," she said. "You're a terrible liar." She almost smiled, caught herself. "I'm just not great at..." This. She gestured vaguely at the room. Neither am I. You're the CEO. You're supposed to be great at this. I'm supposed to be a lot of things. The wine in her glass was warm. She'd been holding it too long. She set it down on the bar, the base making a soft clink against the wood. Declan turned to look at her then. Really look at her. Not the way he did in meetings where it was quick, controlled, something he could deny if anyone noticed. This was different. You look different tonight, he said. Different bad or different good? Just different. The bartender passed by, wiping down the counter, pretending not to listen. Someone laughed too loud across the room. The air conditioning hummed, barely keeping up with the crowd. I should probably go mingle, Hadley said. She didn't move, neither did he. Or, Declan said slowly, you could stay here. Her heart kicked against her ribs. She became suddenly aware of how close he was standing, close enough that she could smell his cologne. Something clean, faintly woody, not the kind of thing that lingered, but the kind that made you want to lean in. I don't think that's a good idea, she said. Probably not. You're my boss. I know. People will notice. They already have. That stopped her. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something she hadn't expected. Not confidence, not control, uncertainty. He looked like he was holding his breath, waiting for her to make a decision he couldn't make himself. The smart thing would have been to walk away, to thank him for the conversation, to go find someone safe to talk to leave early and take the bus home and pretend this never happened. Instead, she said, "There's a terrace upstairs." Declan's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Is there? I saw it when I came in. Nobody's up there. He didn't answer right away, just looked at her like he was trying to figure out if she meant what he thought she meant. She did. Lead the way, he said quietly. The terrace was empty, exactly like she'd said. It was colder up here, the wind coming off the water sharp enough to make her shiver. The city spread out below them, lights everywhere, the kind of view that was supposed to be romantic but mostly just felt vast and indifferent. Hadley wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly aware that her dress was too thin, that she hadn't thought this through, that this was a mistake. Then Declan took off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders without asking. It was warm. It smelled like him. "Thank you," she said. He didn't answer, just stood next to her, close enough that their arms almost touched, staring out at the water. "This is a bad idea," she said again. "You keep saying that." "Because it's true." "I know." "So why are we here?" He turned to look at her. His expression was different now, something raw in it, something she'd never seen at work. "Because I've been thinking about you for 6 months," he said, "and I'm tired of pretending I'm not." Her breath caught. "Declan, you don't have to say anything," he said quickly. "If you want to leave, we'll leave. We'll go back downstairs and pretend this didn't happen, and on Monday everything will be exactly the same. And if I don't want to leave—" He went very still. The wind picked up, pulling strands of hair loose from where she'd pinned them. The fog was rolling in faster now, starting to swallow the bridge. "Then we stop pretending," he said. She didn't remember deciding to kiss him, didn't remember closing the space between them or reaching up or any of it. One moment they were standing there, the city stretched out below, the cold biting at her skin. The next moment his mouth was on hers and nothing else existed. It wasn't gentle. It was 6 months of tension breaking all at once, desperate and hungry, and nothing like she'd imagined. His hands were in her hair, hers fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, like she was afraid he'd disappear if she let go. When they finally broke apart, both of them breathing hard, he pressed his forehead against hers. "We should stop," he said. "I know." Neither of them moved. "My room is on the 12th floor, he said quietly. She should have said no, should have pulled away, should have made the smart choice, should have protected herself from whatever this was going to become. Instead, she nodded. What followed didn't need words. The elevator ride was silent, the hallway empty. His room was dark except for the light from the city coming through the windows. The door closed behind them with a soft click. And then there was just them. His hands were gentler than she expected, careful, like he was afraid she might break. Or maybe like he was afraid he might. When it was over, when they were tangled in sheets that smelled like hotel detergent and both of them were too exhausted to think, Hadley stared at the ceiling and tried to figure out what she'd just done. Declan was already asleep next to her, one arm thrown across her waist, his breathing slow and even. She should have left then. Should have gotten dressed and slipped out and dealt with the aftermath later. But she stayed, just for a little while. She woke up alone. The room was grey with early morning light, that dead hour before sunrise when nothing felt real. Declan's side of the bed was empty, the sheets cool to the touch. Hadley sat up slowly, pulling the sheet around herself. Her dress was on the floor where she'd left it. Her shoes were by the door, there was no note. She got dressed quickly, her hands shaking slightly, the reality of what had happened starting to sink in. She'd slept with her boss, the CEO, at a company event, in a hotel room that probably cost more than she made in a week. She was an idiot. By the time she made it to the lobby, the sun was starting to come up over the bay, turning everything golden pink and mockingly beautiful. She ordered a lift and waited outside, shivering in her dress, Declan's jacket still draped over her shoulders. She should have left it in the room. She didn't. The ride home was long and quiet. The driver didn't try to make conversation, which she was grateful for. When she finally got back to her apartment, the radiator was hissing, the morning light coming through the window harsh and unforgiving. Hadley dropped her bag on the floor. The jacket slipped from her shoulders and landed in a heap beside it. She didn't pick it up. Monday came too fast. Hadley spent the weekend in her apartment, mostly on the couch, staring at her phone like it might suddenly do something. It didn't. No texts, no calls. No acknowledgement that Friday night had even happened. She'd washed his jacket. Stupid, probably, but she couldn't just leave it crumpled on her floor smelling like his cologne and her regret. It was hanging in her closet now, wrapped in dry cleaner plastic she'd had lying around. She told herself she'd find a way to return it. Told herself she wasn't keeping it. She was keeping it. By Sunday night, she'd convinced herself that maybe it would be fine. They were adults. It had happened. They'd move past it. Be professional. Pretend it was just one of those things that happened at corporate events when the wine was free, and everyone was tired of performing. She was wrong. The 14th floor felt different on Monday morning. Or maybe she felt different. Either way, walking through the glass doors at 8:15 felt like stepping onto a stage where everyone already knew her lines except her. Her desk looked exactly the same. The Bay Bridge was grey in the distance, the coffee from the cart on 24th, and Noe had been burnt, like always. Everything was normal, except it wasn't. Hadley logged into her computer, opened her email and found 17 new messages. Most of them were the usual Monday garbage, meeting updates, system notifications, someone asking if anyone had seen the stapler from the supply closet. Nothing from Declan. She told herself that was fine, expected even. He was the CEO. She was an analyst. There was no reason for him to email her directly. By 10 o'clock, she'd checked her inbox 12 times. The morning meeting was in Conference Room B, the one with the broken thermostat that was always either freezing or suffocating. Today, it was freezing. Hadley wrapped her cardigan tighter and took her usual seat near the back, next to Marcus from accounting, who always smelled like cigarettes even though the building was non-smoking. Declan walked in at exactly 10:15. She felt it before she saw him, that shift in the room's energy, everyone sitting up a little straighter, conversations cutting off mid-sentence. He was wearing a charcoal suit, crisp white shirt, no tie. His hair was slightly damp, like he'd showered right before coming in. Their eyes met for exactly half a second. Then he looked away, not a glance, not a flicker of recognition, just away, like she was part of the wall. Hadley's stomach dropped. The meeting was about Q4 projections, something she normally would have paid attention to since it directly affected her department's budget. Instead, she spent 45 minutes staring at her notepad, writing nothing, listening to Declan's voice without hearing a single word. He didn't look at her again, not once. When the meeting ended, everyone filed out in the usual chaotic shuffle, people checking their phones, complaining about their next meeting, asking if anyone wanted to grab lunch later. Hadley stayed in her seat, pretending to review her notes, waiting for the room to empty, waiting for him to say something. Declan packed up his laptop, said something to the VP of Operations about rescheduling, and walked out without a backward glance. The door clicked shut. She sat there for another minute, staring at the empty doorway, feeling something cold settle in her chest. Okay, so that was how this was going to be. By Wednesday, the pattern was clear. Declan was avoiding her, not subtly, not accidentally, deliberately. If she walked into the break room and he was already there, he'd suddenly remember he had a call and leave. If they ended up in the same elevator, he'd stare at his phone the entire ride, jaw tight, shoulders tense. In meetings, he directed questions to literally everyone except her. Even when the topic was her department, he'd ask her manager instead. It was like she'd become invisible again, except this time, it hurt. Hadley tried to tell herself it didn't matter, that she'd known this would happen, that sleeping with your boss was a cliché for a reason, that she should have known better. She was 27, not 17. She knew how the world worked, but knowing something and feeling something were different things. By Thursday, she stopped going to the break room, brought lunch from home, a sad turkey sandwich she'd made at midnight because she couldn't sleep, and ate at her desk while everyone else went out. She started taking the stairs instead of the elevator. Left the office at exactly 5:30, before the executives usually left, so she wouldn't risk running into him in the parking garage. She was making herself small again, disappearing on purpose. It was easier that way. Friday afternoon, she felt it. Not the nausea. That came later. First, it was just this weird awareness, like her body knew something her brain hadn't caught up to yet. She was sitting at her desk, staring at a spreadsheet that needed updating, and suddenly everything felt wrong. The fluorescent lights were too bright, the hum of the air conditioning too loud. Her skin felt hot and cold at the same time. Hadley pushed back from her desk and headed to the bathroom, moving fast but not running, trying not to draw attention. The women's restroom on 14 was always empty in the afternoon, which was the only reason she made it to a stall before throwing up. Nothing dramatic, just her body rejecting the burnt coffee and the half-eaten sandwich, and apparently her entire life. She sat on the floor for a minute after. The tile was cold. Had been cold since 1987, probably. The grout permanently stained no matter how much the cleaning crew scrubbed. Someone had written, "Call for a good time" on the stall door in Sharpie. Facilities had tried to remove it, but you could still see the ghost of the letters. Her hands were shaking. She told herself it was just stress, bad coffee, the sandwich she'd left in her bag too long yesterday before eating it. She told herself a lot of things. The weekend was worse. Saturday morning she threw up again. Sunday the exhaustion hit, the kind that made her bones feel heavy, made getting off the couch feel impossible. She slept 14 hours and woke up feeling like she hadn't slept at all. Monday morning, standing in her bathroom with the test she'd bought at Walgreens at 11 p.m. the night before, Hadley watched the little window with her heart hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat. One line meant no, 2 lines meant yes, 2 lines appeared. She sat down on the edge of the tub. The porcelain was cold through her pajama pants. The radiator was clanking, doing its morning ritual, heat flooding the tiny bathroom until it was almost unbearable. Pregnant. She was pregnant. With Declan Shaw's baby, the CEO who'd been pretending she didn't exist for 2 weeks. Hadley started laughing, not because it was funny, because what else was there to do? Then she started crying. Then she just sat there, staring at the 2 lines, waiting to feel something other than numb. She didn't go to work Monday, called in sick, which wasn't technically a lie, spent the day on her couch, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out what the hell she was supposed to do. She could get rid of it. That was an option. A sensible option. She was 27, single, living paycheck to paycheck in a 1-bedroom walk-up with a radiator that didn't work half the time. Bringing a baby into her life, into this situation, was insane. But she kept thinking about Declan's face that night on the terrace, the way he'd looked at her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered, the way his voice had sounded when he said he'd been thinking about her for 6 months, before he'd spent 2 weeks pretending she didn't exist. By Tuesday, the nausea was constant. She went to work anyway, because rent was due and she couldn't afford to burn through her sick days in the first week. Sat at her desk with a ginger ale she wasn't drinking and tried not to think about how her entire life had just imploded. She had to tell him. The thought made her want to throw up again, which was saying something considering she'd already done that twice before leaving her apartment. But he deserved to know, right? That was the responsible thing, the adult thing, even if he'd made it very clear he wanted nothing to do with her. She found him Wednesday afternoon. He was in his office, the corner one with the view of the whole city. The door usually closed, but today cracked open just enough that she could see him sitting at his desk, staring at his computer screen with that focused intensity he always had. Hadley stood in the hallway for a full minute, trying to make herself knock. Her hand was shaking. Just do it. Just get it over with. She knocked. "Come in." His voice was clipped, professional, the voice of someone who had back-to-back meetings and 7 fires to put out before lunch. Hadley pushed the door open. Declan looked up, saw her, and something flashed across his face, and too fast to read, gone before she could name it. Hadley. Flat, neutral, like she was a stranger. "What can I do for you?" She stepped inside and closed the door behind her. The click echoed louder than it should have. "I need to talk to you, sir," she said. "I have a meeting in 10 minutes. This won't take long." He stared at her for a moment, then gestured to the chair across from his desk. The chair was expensive leather, the kind that was supposed to be comfortable but just felt cold. She didn't sit. "I'm pregnant," she said. The words came out flat, factual, like she was reporting quarterly numbers. Declan went very still. The silence stretched. 5 seconds. 10. 20. "You're sure?" he said finally. "I'm sure." Another silence. He looked down at his desk, at nothing in particular, his jaw working like he was trying to figure out what to say. "When did you—" "Monday. And it's—" He stopped, started again. "It's mine." Not a question, a statement, but the way he said it. Careful, controlled, like he was trying very hard not to sound like he was asking, made her chest tighten. "Yes." He nodded slowly, still wasn't looking at her. "Okay," he said. That was it. Just okay. Hadley waited for more, for a question, a reaction, anything. Nothing came. "That's all you're going to say?" Her voice came out sharper than she'd intended. "Okay." Declan finally looked up at her. His expression was unreadable. That CEO mask he wore in board meetings, in press conferences, whenever he needed to look like he had everything under control. "What do you want me to say, Hadley?" "I don't know. Something. Anything. This is—" He stopped, ran a hand through his hair, the first crack in the facade. "This isn't something I was planning for." "You think I was." "I didn't say that. You didn't have to." He stood up, moved to the window, putting distance between them. His hands were in his pockets, shoulders tense, staring out at the city like it might have answers. "What are you going to do?" he asked quietly. The question landed like a punch. "I don't know yet." "Do you need—" He stopped again. Everything he said came out wrong, like he was reading from a script he hadn't rehearsed. "Do you need anything? Money for—" "Whatever you decide." Money. He was offering her money. "I don't want your money, Declan." "Then what do you want?" She didn't have an answer for that. Or maybe she did, but saying it out loud would make her pathetic. She wanted him to turn around, to look at her like he had that night on the terrace, to not treat her like a problem that needed solving. "I wanted you to know," she said finally. "That's all." He turned then, finally looked at her, and for just a second she saw something in his face. Fear, maybe, or regret. Something raw and real. Then it was gone. "I appreciate you telling me," he said. Formal, distant, like she was a stranger. Hadley felt something inside her crack. Not break, just crack, enough to let the cold in. "Right," she said. "Of course." She turned to leave. "Hadley—" She stopped, hand on the doorknob. "We'll figure this out," he said. "I just—" I need some time to think. She didn't turn around, didn't trust herself to look at him. Take all the time you need. She opened the door and walked out. Behind her, she heard his office door close. The sound was final. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in avoidance. Declan didn't just ignore her, he erased her. Meetings got rescheduled if she was on the invite list. Emails that used to go to her entire department now went to everyone except her. When she had to present budget updates in the weekly ops meeting, he delegated someone else to run it. Said he had a conflict, said it twice. He was lying both times. Hadley knew because she saw him, in the hallway outside Conference Room B, talking to someone from legal, just standing there checking his watch, waiting for her presentation to be over so he could go in after. He saw her see him, turned around and walked the other direction. She stopped trying to make sense of it, stopped trying to figure out what she'd done wrong beyond the obvious, getting pregnant, telling him about it, existing in his general vicinity. The rejection was clear. The message was clear. He wanted nothing to do with her. Fine. She could work with that. The nausea got worse, not just mornings anymore. All day this constant low-grade queasiness that made everything feel slightly tilted. She kept oyster crackers in her desk drawer, the cheap kind from Safeway that came in the red box. Ate them one at a time during meetings, trying to look casual about it, like she just really loved stale crackers. Nobody asked, or if they noticed, they didn't say anything. Except Sienna from HR. They were in the bathroom on Thursday, the one on 12, because the one on 14 had been out of order all week, and nobody could figure out why. Hadley was washing her hands, staring at herself in the mirror. She looked tired, pale, the kind of pale that came from throwing up 3 times before 9 a.m. "You okay?" Sienna asked. She was reapplying lipstick, the kind of bold red that Hadley could never pull off. "You've been looking kinda rough lately." "I'm fine." "You sure? Because you've been in here a lot." Hadley grabbed a paper towel. The dispenser was broken, only giving out 1 at a time, so she had to pull 3 times to get enough to dry her hands. "Just a stomach thing," she said. "For 2 weeks?" "It's stubborn." Sienna capped her lipstick, dropped it in her bag, gave Hadley a look that was too knowing, too careful. "If you need to talk to someone," she said slowly, "HR is confidential, just so you know." Hadley's stomach dropped. She knows, or she suspects. Either way, it was only a matter of time before other people started asking questions. Started doing math. Started remembering that she'd been at the gala. That Declan had been at the gala. That 2 + 2 usually equaled something people loved to gossip about. "I'm good," Hadley said, "but thanks." She left before Sienna could push it. That night, alone in her apartment, Hadley made a decision. She was keeping it. The baby. She was keeping the baby. Not because of Declan. Not because she thought he'd suddenly transform into someone capable of showing up. But because sitting on her couch at 9 p.m. on a Thursday, eating cereal for dinner because cooking felt impossible, she realized she wanted this. It was terrifying, financially insane, probably the worst decision she'd ever made, but she wanted it. She called her mom. They hadn't talked in 3 months, not because of any big fight, just because that was how it was with her mother. Distance. Silence. The occasional text on birthdays. The phone rang 4 times before she answered. "Hadley?" Her mom's voice was cautious. "Is everything okay?" "I'm pregnant." Silence. Then, "Oh." Just, "Oh." Not congratulations. Not who's the father. Not "Are you okay?" Just "Oh." "I'm keeping it," Hadley said, filling the silence because her mother wasn't. "I know it's not ideal, and I know I'm doing this alone, but I wanted you to know." "Alone?" Her mother's voice sharpened. "What about the father?" "He's not involved." "Not involved or not interested? Does it matter?" Another silence. Hadley could hear the TV in the background. Some crime show her mother always watched. Could picture her sitting in the same recliner she'd had for 15 years, the one with the permanent dent from where she always sat. "It matters if he's going to pay child support," her mother said finally. Of course. Of course, that's where her mind went. "I'm handling it," Hadley said. "You're 27, Hadley. You work in admin. How exactly are you going to handle a baby?" "I'll figure it out. Like you figured out college. Like you figured out that job in Portland that lasted 6 months. There it was. The reminder that Hadley had always been a disappointment. Never quite good enough. Never quite getting it right. I have to go, Hadley said. Hadley. She hung up. Sat there on her couch, phone in her lap, feeling the familiar ache of her mother's disapproval settle in her chest like something she'd swallowed wrong. The radiator clanked. The neighbor upstairs was walking around, heavy footsteps that made the ceiling creak. Somewhere down the hall, someone was cooking something that smelled like burnt garlic. Hadley put her hand on her stomach, still flat, still just her. But not for long. We'll be okay, she said out loud. To herself, to the baby, to the empty apartment. She didn't know if she believed it. But she said it anyway. Friday morning, the all-hands meeting. Quarterly update. Mandatory attendance. The kind of meeting where everyone showed up 10 minutes late because nobody actually wanted to be there. And the executives pretended they didn't notice. Hadley got there early. Grabbed a seat in the back near the door because that's what she did now. Made herself easy to miss, easy to ignore. The auditorium was on the ground floor, a space that was supposed to feel modern and open, but mostly just felt like a very expensive high school gym. The chairs were uncomfortable, the acoustics were terrible, and the air conditioning was always cranked too high. People filed in slowly. Finance, operations, engineering, sales. Everyone clustered with their departments, checking phones, complaining about their workload, asking if anyone wanted to grab lunch after. Hadley sat alone. At exactly 9, the executives walked in. CFO, COO, head of product, head of engineering, and Declan. He was wearing navy today. Suit perfectly tailored, tie perfectly straight, the kind of put-together that probably took 5 minutes but looked effortless. His hair was slightly longer than it had been at the gala, just starting to curl at his collar. He walked to the front of the room, took the mic and started talking. Hadley didn't hear a word. She was too busy watching the way he held himself. Shoulders back, posture perfect, voice steady. The CEO, in control, unshakable. Except she knew better now. She'd seen him on that terrace with the fog rolling in, looking at her like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking himself for months. She'd felt his hands shake when he'd reached for her, heard his voice crack when he said we should stop. That version of him didn't exist anymore. Or maybe it had never existed at all. Halfway through his presentation, something about market expansion, new partnerships, projected growth. Declan's eyes swept the room and landed on her. For exactly 2 seconds, he looked at her. Really looked at her. Then he looked away. But in those 2 seconds, Hadley saw it. The tightness around his eyes. The set of his jaw. The way his hand gripped the podium just a little too hard. He wasn't unaffected. He was just better at hiding it. After the meeting, people lingered, networking, talking, trying to look interested in whatever the person next to them was saying. Hadley grabbed her bag and headed for the exit, keeping her head down, trying to disappear into the crowd. She almost made it. Hadley, his voice stopped her cold. She turned. Declan was standing 10 feet away, hands in his pockets, expression carefully neutral. People were still around, not close enough to hear, but close enough to see. "Can we talk?" he asked. "Now?" "When you have a minute." She glanced around. A few people were looking, not staring, just noticing. The CEO talking to a random analyst. Nothing scandalous. Just unusual. "Your office?" she asked. "Conference room D, 10 minutes. He didn't wait for an answer. Just walked away, already pulling his phone out, already moving on to the next thing. Hadley stood there for a second, her heart doing something complicated in her chest. Then she headed for the elevator. Conference room D was on 15. The small one, the one nobody liked because it didn't have windows and the table was too big for the space. It always felt claustrophobic, like the walls were too close. Declan was already there when she arrived, standing by the table, scrolling through his phone. He looked up when she walked in. "Close the door," he said. She did. The click echoed. For a long moment, neither of them said anything. He put his phone down. She stayed by the door, keeping distance between them, her bag still on her shoulder like she might need to leave in a hurry. "I've been thinking," he said finally. "That's a start." He almost smiled. Almost. I owe you an apology, he said, for how I've been handling this, or not handling it. Okay. That's it? Just okay. What do you want me to say, Declan? That it's fine, that I understand. I don't know. Neither do I. He ran a hand through his hair, messing up the perfect styling. It was the most human thing she'd seen him do in weeks. This isn't easy for me, he said quietly. You think it's easy for me? No, I know it's not. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and she saw something in his face she hadn't expected. Guilt. I'm sorry for avoiding you, for making this harder than it needs to be. Why did you? Because I didn't know what to say, because every time I saw you, I just... He stopped, shook his head. I panicked, and that's not an excuse. It's just the truth. Hadley set her bag down on the chair, crossed her arms, tried to keep her voice steady. I'm not asking you to be excited about this, she said. I'm not asking you to suddenly want to play house, but I'm asking you to not treat me like I'm invisible. I know. Do you? Because for the last 2 weeks you've acted like I don't exist. And I get it. This is complicated, but I'm still a person. I still work here. And I can't do this if every time you see me you look like you want to be anywhere else. He flinched. Actually flinched. You're right, he said. I know I am. So what do we do? Hadley laughed. No humor in it. Just exhaustion. I don't know, Declan. You're the CEO. You figure it out. She grabbed her bag. Wait. I have work to do. Hadley, please. She stopped. Hand on the doorknob. Didn't turn around. I need time, he said, to figure out what this means. What I'm supposed to do. Take all the time you need. But I don't want you to think... He stopped, started again. I don't want you to think I don't care. She turned then, looked at him, saw the truth in his face. He did care. Maybe not the way she wanted him to. But he cared. It didn't make it hurt less. I'll see you around, she said. She opened the door and walked out. Behind her, she heard him say her name one more time. She kept walking. That afternoon she left work early, told her manager she had a doctor's appointment, which wasn't technically a lie. She'd made one for next week. First prenatal visit. She was supposed to bring someone with her. She'd be going alone. The bus was crowded, smelling like wet coats and body odor, and the weird chemical smell of the disinfectant they used to clean the seats. She stood near the back, holding onto the pole, trying not to think about the conversation with Declan, trying not to replay his face, the guilt in his voice. He was trying. It wasn't enough, but it was something. When she got home, her apartment felt too quiet. She turned on the TV just for noise, some cooking show she wasn't watching. Made herself eat something, crackers, cheese, an apple she'd bought last week that was starting to go soft. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Declan. Got your number from HR. Hope that's okay. Her heart kicked. She stared at the message for a full minute before typing back. It's fine. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Can I call you? She didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know if she wanted to hear his voice right now, in her apartment, in this space that was supposed to be separate from all of this. But she typed, yeah. Her phone rang 10 seconds later. She answered. Hey, he said. Hey. Silence, the kind that felt heavy. I meant what I said earlier, he said finally, about the apology, about all of it. Okay. And I want to do better, be better, I don't know how. Hadley closed her eyes, leaned back against her couch. The fabric was scratchy, worn thin in places. She'd bought it used 3 years ago from someone on Craigslist. Neither do I, she said quietly. More silence. My first meeting is Thursday, she said. Prenatal appointment, 9 a.m. Do you want me to come? The question surprised her. Do you want to come? I think I should. Not I want to. I should. It wasn't what she wanted to hear, but it was honest. Okay, she said. I'll text you the address. Okay. Neither of them hung up. Hadley? Yeah? I really am sorry. She believed him. That was the worst part. She believed him, and it still didn't fix anything. "I know," she said. They sat there in silence for another moment, her in her apartment with the TV on mute, him wherever he was, both of them trying to figure out how to exist in this new reality. Finally, she said, "I should go." "Right, yeah, I'll see you Thursday." Thursday. She hung up, set her phone on the coffee table. The apple she'd been eating sat there, one bite taken out of it, already turning brown. She didn't finish it. Thursday came with rain, not the dramatic kind, just that constant San Francisco drizzle that made everything grey and slick and vaguely depressing. Hadley stood at the bus stop on 24th and Church, watching water bead on her jacket, checking her phone every 30 seconds even though she knew what time it was. 8:15. The clinic was in the Mission, on Valencia between 16th and 17th. She'd picked it because it was close to a BART station, because the reviews online were decent, because the website said they took her insurance, not because it was convenient. Nothing about this was convenient. Declan had texted at 7 a.m., still good for 9. She'd typed back, "Yeah, meet you there, no good morning, no how are you feeling, just logistics," which was fine, better than fine. She didn't need him pretending to care about things he didn't actually care about. The 33 bus pulled up 10 minutes late, like always. She climbed on, tapped her Clipper card, found a seat near the back. The bus smelled like wet fabric and coffee, and something sour she couldn't identify. A guy near the front was on a call, talking too loud about some problem with his landlord. Nobody told him to keep it down. Hadley stared out the window and tried not to throw up. The clinic was exactly what she expected. Bland waiting room with magazines nobody read. Front desk staffed by someone who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Chairs that were probably beige in 1995 and were now just sad. She checked in at 8:50. "First appointment?" the receptionist asked without looking up. "Yeah. Fill these out." She handed over a clipboard with about 17 pages of forms. "Insurance card?" Hadley pulled it from her wallet. The card was bent at the corner, the letters starting to fade. She'd had the same insurance for 3 years. It covered the basics. Barely. She sat down in a chair by the window, started filling out forms: name, address, date of birth, social security number, emergency contact. She left that one blank. By 9 she'd finished the paperwork and Declan still wasn't there. 9:05. Nothing. 9:10. Her phone buzzed. Running late. Traffic on 101, be there soon. Of course. Hadley turned her phone face down on her lap, stared at the wall. Someone had put up a poster about prenatal vitamins, another one about breastfeeding. Everything was aggressively cheerful, like having a baby was just this wonderful adventure, and not the terrifying clusterfuck it actually was. Hadley Pierce. She looked up. A nurse stood in the doorway holding a tablet, looking pleasant and professional in the way all medical staff looked pleasant and professional. "That's me. Come on back." Hadley glanced at the front door. Still no Declan. "Actually, I'm waiting for—" "You can wait in the exam room as well," the nurse said. "More comfortable than out here." It wasn't really a question. Hadley grabbed her bag and followed. The exam room was small. Beige walls, fluorescent lights that hummed, an exam table covered in that crinkly paper that was supposed to be sanitary, but just felt cheap. A poster on the wall showed a fetus at different stages of development. 8 weeks, 12 weeks, 16 weeks. Little alien shapes that were supposed to turn into humans. "Have a seat," the nurse said, gesturing to the table. "We'll start with some basics. How far along do you think you are?" "About 6 weeks." The nurse nodded, typing on her tablet. "And the father? Is he coming today?" "He's supposed to be." "Okay. Well, we can get started and he can join when he gets here." She pulled out a blood pressure cuff. "Let's check your vitals." Hadley held out her arm. The cuff squeezed tight, released. The machine beeped. "Little elevated," the nurse said. "But that's normal. First appointments are stressful." "Yeah." "Any morning sickness?" "A lot." "How much is a lot?" "Every day, multiple times." The nurse made a note. "We can prescribe something for that if it gets too bad." "What about fatigue?" "Constantly." "Also normal." "Your body's working overtime." She smiled. It was supposed to be reassuring, it wasn't. Any bleeding or cramping? No. Good, that's good. More questions, more typing. Hadley answered on autopilot, her mind somewhere else. Wondering where Declan was. Wondering if he'd actually show up or if this was just another version of him avoiding the situation. There was a knock on the door. The nurse opened it. Declan stood there, slightly out of breath, his hair damp from the rain, still wearing his suit from work even though it was barely 9:30 in the morning. "Sorry," he said. "Traffic was—" "It's fine," Hadley said. It wasn't fine. The nurse looked between them, clearly picking up on the tension, then smiled that professional smile again. "You must be Dad." Declan flinched, just barely, but Hadley saw it. "Yeah," he said. The nurse gestured to the chair in the corner. "Have a seat. We're just finishing up vitals, then Dr. Morrison will be in." Declan sat, hands on his knees, posture rigid, looking like he'd rather be in a board meeting with investors who hated him. The nurse finished her notes. "Okay, you're all set. Doctor will be in shortly." She left, closing the door behind her. Silence. The fluorescent lights hummed. Somewhere down the hall, someone was crying. Not loud, just this quiet, steady sobbing that leaked through the walls. "Sorry I was late," Declan said finally. "You said that already." "Right." More silence. Hadley picked at the edge of the paper covering the exam table. It tore easily, leaving a little jagged edge that she kept making bigger without meaning to. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Pregnant." "I mean, I know what you meant." He exhaled slowly, ran a hand through his hair, leaving it sticking up slightly. She'd never seen him look this uncomfortable, not in meetings, not when she'd told him about the pregnancy. This was different. This was real. "I don't know what I'm supposed to say," he admitted. "You don't have to say anything. That doesn't feel right either." "Welcome to the last month of my life." He almost smiled. Almost. Another knock. The door opened. A woman in her 50s walked in, grey hair pulled back, glasses on a chain around her neck, the kind of calm, steady presence that probably put most people at ease. "Hi, I'm Dr. Morrison." She shook Hadley's hand first, then Declan's. Sat down on the rolling stool, pulled up Hadley's chart on the computer. "So, first pregnancy?" "Yeah." "How are you feeling?" "Nauseous, tired, kinda like I got hit by a truck." Dr. Morrison nodded. "That's about right for 6 weeks. The first trimester is rough. Your body's adjusting to a lot of hormonal changes." She turned to Declan. "How about you? How are you doing with all this?" He looked caught off guard by the question, like nobody had thought to ask him how he felt. He trailed off. "It's a lot. That's normal too." She turned back to Hadley. "Okay, let's take a look. We'll do an ultrasound today just to confirm dates and make sure everything looks good. Sound okay?" Hadley nodded. Dr. Morrison pulled over the ultrasound machine. Older model, screen slightly yellowed, the kind of equipment that worked but had definitely seen better days. "This is going to be cold," she warned, squeezing gel onto Hadley's stomach. It was cold, shockingly cold. Hadley inhaled sharply. "Sorry." Dr. Morrison pressed the wand against her abdomen, moving it slowly, eyes on the screen. The image was grainy, black and white, mostly just static. Then something appeared, small, a blur, a flicker. "There we go," Dr. Morrison said. "See that?" Hadley stared at the screen. It didn't look like anything, just a blob, a tiny, flickering blob. "That's the heartbeat," Dr. Morrison said, adjusting the wand slightly. The flickering became clearer, fast, steady, strong heartbeat. "That's good." Hadley couldn't look away. That was real. That was actually real. She glanced at Declan. He was staring at the screen too, his face unreadable. But his hands were gripping his knees, knuckles white. "Based on measurements, I'd say you're about 6 weeks, 3 days, Dr. Morrison said. Due date would be around." She did some mental math. Early June. June 7th, if we're being specific. June, that was soon, that was real. "Everything looks good," Dr. Morrison said, pulling the wand away, wiping the gel off Hadley's stomach with rough paper towels that smelled like disinfectant. I'll print you out a copy of the ultrasound. We'll want to see you back in 4 weeks for your next appointment." She left the room, presumably to get the printout. Hadley pulled her shirt down, sat up. Her hands were shaking slightly. "You okay?" Declan asked. "Yeah, That was real." "Yeah. Like, actually real." "I know." She looked at him. He was still pale, still gripping his knees like he might fall off the chair if he let go. "You saw it, right?" she asked. "The heartbeat?" "I saw it. And what? And what are you thinking?" He was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, quieter, more honest. "I'm thinking this is the most scared I've been in my entire life." She almost laughed. Would have, if it wasn't also the truest thing he'd ever said to her. "Yeah," she said. "Same." Dr. Morrison came back with the printout. A small black and white image on glossy paper, the blob barely visible, the date and time stamped in the corner. "Here you go," she said, handing it to Hadley. "See you in 4 weeks. Front desk will get you scheduled, and if anything comes up, bleeding, severe cramping, anything that feels wrong, call us immediately." "Okay." Dr. Morrison shook both their hands again, gave them that professional smile and left. Hadley stared at the ultrasound. It still just looked like a blob, but it was her blob. "Can I—" Declan gestured at the printout. "Can I see it?" She handed it to him. He held it carefully, like it might disintegrate if he breathed wrong. Stared at it for a long time without saying anything. "That's—" He stopped. "That's ours." "Yeah, I made that." He looked up at her, something like wonder in his face. "We made that." "We did." He kept staring at the picture. Hadley watched him, watched the way his expression shifted. Fear, still, but something else too. Something she couldn't quite name. Finally, he handed it back to her. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For letting me be here." She didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded. They left the exam room together, checked out at the front desk, scheduled the next appointment. The receptionist handed Hadley a folder full of pamphlets about pregnancy, nutrition, what to expect, all of it overwhelming and useless and somehow necessary. Outside, the rain had stopped. The street was still wet, puddles reflecting the grey sky, that after-rain smell mixing with exhaust from the cars on Valencia. "I can give you a ride," Declan said, "if you want." "I'm good. Bus is right there." "Hadley?" "I'm good," she said again. He nodded, pulled his keys from his pocket, stood there for a second looking like he wanted to say something else. "I'll see you at work," she said. "Yeah, okay." She started walking toward the bus stop. "Hadley?" She turned. "I meant what I said in there," he said, "about being scared." "I know. But I'm not running." She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that showing up to one appointment meant something. That seeing a flickering heartbeat on a grainy screen had changed something fundamental. But belief required trust, and trust required more than one morning. "Okay," she said. She didn't wait for his response, just turned and kept walking. Behind her, she heard his car door open, close, the engine starting. She didn't look back. The bus ride home was quiet, less crowded than the morning, just a handful of people scattered throughout. Hadley sat by the window, the ultrasound printout still in her bag, feeling the weight of it like it was something precious. Her phone buzzed, a text from Declan, "Thank you for today." She stared at it for a long time, didn't respond. When she got home, she pulled the ultrasound from her bag, stood in her kitchen, staring at the tiny blob that was supposed to turn into a person. She put it on her fridge, held it there with a magnet shaped like the Golden Gate Bridge that she'd bought at a tourist shop 5 years ago, and never used for anything. The blob stared back at her. "Hi," she said quietly. The apartment was silent. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, someone was shouting about parking. A car alarm went off, stopped, went off again. Hadley touched the ultrasound one more time, her fingers leaving a small smudge on the glossy paper. Then she turned away and made herself eat something. The crackers from the box in her cupboard tasted like cardboard. She ate them anyway. 3 weeks passed in a kind of limbo. Declan tried, That was the thing. He actually tried. He texted her most days. Nothing deep. Just checking in. How are you feeling? Did you eat? Let me know if you need anything. The kind of messages that were technically thoughtful but felt like items on a to-do list. Check on pregnant employee. Done. He stopped avoiding her at work. Didn't go out of his way to talk to her, but he didn't actively flee anymore either. Progress, maybe. Or just the bare minimum of human decency. Hadley didn't know which. The nausea was getting worse. She'd taken to keeping a plastic bag in her desk drawer just in case. Had used it twice. The second time, Quinn from marketing had walked by and definitely noticed but was polite enough to pretend she hadn't. It was a Tuesday in late November when everything fell apart. The executive team was hosting a company-wide town hall, quarterly results, new initiatives, the usual corporate theater designed to make everyone feel included in decisions that had already been made. It was in the main conference room on 3, the one with the exposed brick and the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Embarcadero. Mandatory attendance. Hadley got there 5 minutes early, grabbed a seat in the middle, not too visible, not too hidden. The room was filling up fast. People grabbing coffee from the station in the back, clustering with their teams, checking phones while pretending to network. She'd worn a cardigan that was getting tight around the middle. Nothing obvious yet, but she could feel it. The way her clothes fit different. The way her body was changing in ways she couldn't control. Declan walked in with the rest of the leadership team. Navy suit, white shirt, no tie. He looked tired. She'd noticed that lately, at the shadows under his eyes, the tightness around his mouth, like he wasn't sleeping. The presentation started. CFO talked about revenue. COO talked about operational efficiency. Head of product talked about the roadmap for next year. Then Declan stood up. "I want to talk about culture," he said. The room went quiet. Culture was code for layoffs or restructuring or some other bad news dressed up in corporate speak. "We've grown a lot in the last 2 years," Declan continued, "and with growth comes growing pains. We need to make sure we're building something sustainable, something that lasts." Hadley watched him talk, watched the way he commanded the room without even trying, the way people leaned forward, paying attention, wanting to believe whatever he was selling. He was good at this, being the CEO, being in control. "Which is why we're implementing some changes," he said. "Starting next quarter, we're restructuring several departments, making them leaner, more efficient." There it was, layoffs. The room shifted, people glancing at each other, doing the math, wondering if their job was safe. "We'll be sending out more details in the coming weeks," Declan said. "But I want to be transparent. This is going to be difficult. We're going to have to make some hard choices." He kept talking about the future, about vision, about all the buzzwords that were supposed to make people feel better about losing their jobs. Hadley stopped listening. Restructuring. Leaner departments. She was in admin. Admin was always the first to go. Her hand went to her stomach without thinking. Still flat. Still just her. For now. After the meeting, people scattered. Some headed straight to their desks, probably to update their resumes. Others clustered in small groups, whispering, speculating. Hadley went to the bathroom. Not to throw up this time, just to breathe. To stand in a stall with the door locked and try to process what she'd just heard. She was probably going to lose her job. She was pregnant, single, and probably about to lose her job. The bathroom door opened. Voices. 2 women from sales, talking in that careful way people talked when they thought they were alone but weren't sure. "Can't believe they're doing this right before the holidays. Typical. They never care about timing. Heard admin is getting hit hard." Hadley's stomach dropped. "Makes sense, I guess. They're always overstaffed." "Someone told me they're cutting like 30%. Jesus." The voices faded as they left. The door swung shut. Hadley stood there, staring at the stall door. Someone had carved "fuck this place" into the paint. She agreed. She pulled out her phone, opened her text with Declan, started typing. "Did you know about the layoffs when—" Deleted it. Started again. "Were you planning to tell me?" Deleted that too. She put her phone away, walked out of the bathroom, went back to her desk, tried to work, couldn't. By 4 o'clock, she couldn't sit still anymore. The office felt suffocating. Everyone was on edge, conversations hushed, people staring at their screens without actually working. Hadley grabbed her bag and left, took the stairs down 14 floors because waiting for the elevator felt impossible. Walked out onto Market Street where the afternoon was grey and cold, the kind of November day that made you remember summer was a myth. She started walking. No destination, just movement. Up Market toward Castro, past the rainbow crosswalks and the vintage shops and the bars that were already starting to fill up even though it was a Tuesday. Up the hill until her legs burned and her breath came short. She ended up at Dolores Park. It was mostly empty, too cold for the usual crowd. A couple of people walking dogs, a guy on a bench reading a book, hunched against the wind. The grass was wet, the skyline barely visible through the fog rolling in. Hadley sat on a bench near the tennis courts, pulled her jacket tighter. Her phone buzzed. Declan. Where are you? She stared at the message. Didn't answer. Another buzz. Your manager said you left early. Are you okay? Still didn't answer. Hadley. Please. She typed back, I'm fine. 3 dots appeared immediately. Where are you? Dolores Park. I'm coming. Don't. The dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Too late. Already on my way. She should have left, should have gotten up and taken the bus home before he got there. But she was tired. Tired of running. Tired of pretending everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. So she stayed. Declan showed up 20 minutes later. She saw him before he saw her. Walking up the path from 19th Street, still in his suit, completely out of place among the dog walkers and the joggers, and the people who actually belonged in a park on a Tuesday afternoon. He spotted her, made his way over, sat down on the bench next to her without asking if it was okay. For a minute, neither of them said anything. You walked out of a meeting, and he said finally, I left work early, there's a difference. Your manager was worried. My manager can deal with it. Hadley. When were you going to tell me? She turned to look at him. About the layoffs. He went still. It's not finalized yet. That's not an answer. I was going to tell you. When? After you fired me. After I had to find out in a company-wide meeting like everyone else. You're not getting fired. How do you know that? Because I won't let it happen. She laughed. No humor in it. Right, because that's not a conflict of interest at all. I don't care. You should. People are going to notice if the pregnant analyst is the only one in her department who keeps her job. Let them notice. Easy for you to say. You're not the one people are going to talk about. He ran a hand through his hair, left it sticking up. What do you want me to do, Hadley? Tell me. Because I'm trying here, and it's never enough. I want you to be honest with me. I am being honest. No, you're being careful. There's a difference. She pulled her jacket tighter. The wind was picking up, cold and sharp. You show up to the appointment, you send me texts, you make sure I'm not getting fired, but you're not actually here, you're just performing, going through the motions. That's not fair, isn't it? I'm doing the best I can. Are you? She turned to face him fully now. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're doing the bare minimum to not feel guilty. He flinched. You think I don't feel guilty? I think you feel guilty about the wrong things. What's that supposed to mean? It means you feel guilty about avoiding me at work, about not calling enough, about all the surface-level stuff. She paused. But you don't actually want this. You don't want the baby. You're just trying to do the right thing because that's who you are. And I get it, I do, but I can't. Her voice cracked. I can't do this with someone who's only here out of obligation. The silence that followed was heavy. Somewhere behind them, someone's dog was barking. A siren wailed in the distance. The fog was getting thicker, swallowing the buildings one by one. You're right, Declan said quietly. She wasn't expecting that. I'm scared, he continued. I'm terrified, actually. And I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be what you need, what the baby needs. He looked at her then, and she saw it. The fear, the vulnerability, all the things he kept locked down. But you're wrong about one thing. What? I do want this. His voice was rough. I want this so badly it keeps me up at night. Because wanting it means admitting I could lose it, that I could fuck it up, that I already am fucking it up. Hadley felt something crack open in her chest. Then why? Because I watched my father do this, he said. The absent dad thing, the guy who showed up to one soccer game a year and thought that was enough, who paid for everything but was never actually there. He looked away. I swore I'd never be that person. And now I'm looking at this situation, and I'm terrified I'm going to be exactly that person. So don't be. It's not that simple. Yes, it is. She reached over, grabbed his hand, made him look at her. You show up, you keep showing up, even when it's hard, even when you're scared. That's it, that's the whole thing. What if I'm not good at it? Then you figure it out, we figure it out together. He stared at her, and then slowly he nodded. Okay. Okay? Yeah, okay. He squeezed her hand. I'm in. For real this time, not just going through the motions. Actually in. She wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe that one conversation in a park could fix everything, but belief was built, not given. Prove it, she said. How? I don't know. That's the point. You have to figure it out. He nodded again. Didn't let go of her hand. They sat there in silence, watching the fog roll in, the city disappearing piece by piece. When Hadley got home that night, there was a text waiting. Declan. I meant what I said, I'm in. Another text came through while she was reading the first. And you're not getting laid off. I already talked to your manager. Your position is safe. Then, I know that doesn't fix everything, but it's a start. Hadley sat on her couch, staring at her phone. Typed back, thank you. 3 dots appeared. Don't thank me. You're right. I need to do better. I will do better. She didn't respond. Just set her phone down. Looked around her small apartment with the creaky floors and the clanking radiator and the second-hand couch from Craigslist. In 6 months, there would be a baby here. In her life. Their life. She put her hand on her stomach. Still flat. Still just her. But not for much longer. The next morning at work, Declan did something unexpected. He sat next to her in the weekly ops meeting. Not across the table. Not at the head where he usually sat. Right next to her, in the chair that had been empty because nobody wanted to sit that close to the CEO. He didn't announce it, didn't explain it. Just sat down like it was the most natural thing in the world. People noticed. Of course they noticed. But he didn't seem to care. When the meeting ended, he walked out with her. Down the hall past the elevators, all the way to her desk. Lunch today? He asked. What? Lunch. Do you want to get lunch? With you? Is that weird? Kind of, yeah. Okay, we'll make it not weird. He checked his watch. 12:30. There's that place on Folsom you mentioned once, the one with the good sandwiches. She'd mentioned that 4 months ago. In passing, in a conversation she didn't think he'd been paying attention to. You remember that? I remember a lot of things. Something in his tone made her chest tighten. Okay, she said. 12:30. Okay. He walked away, not back to his office, just away, disappearing into the maze of cubicles like a normal person. Hadley sat down at her desk, opened her email, tried to focus on work. Her hand kept drifting to her stomach. They went to lunch. It was awkward at first. Both of them trying too hard to make small talk, the conversation stilted and weird. But somewhere between ordering their sandwiches and finishing them, it got easier. He asked about her childhood. She asked about his. He told her about his father, the absence, the resentment. She told him about her mother, the disappointment, the distance. We're kind of a mess, she said. Yeah, he agreed. But maybe that's okay. You think? I think nobody knows what they're doing. They just pretend they do. She smiled. Actually smiled. When did you get wise? I'm not wise. I'm just scared enough to be honest. When they left the restaurant, walking back toward the office, he reached for her hand. Hesitated. She took his instead. They walked back, holding hands. Up Folsom, across Market, past the tourists and the office workers and everyone else going about their day. People from work saw them, definitely saw them. Neither of them let go. When they got back to the building, he stopped at the entrance. I meant what I said yesterday, he said. I'm in. I know. And I'm going to prove it. I know that too. He smiled. Actually smiled, not the CEO smile. Something real. Then he went back to work. And so did she. That night, Hadley got home to find a package outside her door. Plain brown box, no return address. She brought it inside, opened it. Inside was a pregnancy book. What to expect when you're expecting. Dog-eared and highlighted, used. And a note in Declan's handwriting. Found this at a bookstore in Hayes Valley. The woman working there said it saved her life during her first pregnancy. Figured we could use all the help we can get. Dee Hadley sat on her couch holding the book, reading the note over and over. The radiator clanked. The neighbor upstairs was walking around. Outside, the city hummed. She opened the book to the first marked page, started reading. 6 months later. The nursery wasn't perfect. The crib was from IKEA, assembled at 2 in the morning by Declan, who'd insisted he didn't need the instructions and then absolutely needed the instructions. The walls were pale yellow, not the soft buttery color Hadley had wanted, but close enough because the paint store had been out of stock, and she'd been too tired to care. The rocking chair was second-hand, bought from a woman in Bernal Heights, who'd used it for 3 kids and swore it was magic. The cushion had a stain that wouldn't come out, but it was comfortable, which mattered more. It was late May. The fog hadn't lifted yet today, typical for San Francisco, the grey pressing against the windows of Hadley's apartment. Declan's apartment now too, technically, since he'd moved in 3 weeks ago. Not officially. His name wasn't on the lease. Half his stuff was still in boxes stacked in the corner of the bedroom, but his toothbrush was in the bathroom. His coffee mug was in the sink. His jacket was on the hook by the door. He was here. Hadley sat in the rocking chair, the magic one, 8 months pregnant and exhausted in a way that sleep didn't fix. Her back ached. Her feet were swollen. She couldn't see her toes anymore. The baby kicked, hard, right against her ribs. "I know," she said quietly. "I'm uncomfortable too." The apartment was quiet. Declan had gone out to grab food, tacos from the truck on 24th that she'd been craving for 3 days straight. He'd been gone 20 minutes. She missed him already, which was new, missing someone, wanting them around. 6 months ago she would have laughed at that, at the idea of Declan Shaw being the person she wanted around most. But here they were. It hadn't been perfect. Nothing about the last 6 months had been perfect. There'd been fights, real ones, yelling and slamming doors, and both of them saying things they regretted, about money, about space, about his mother who'd shown up unannounced and made everything awkward, about her mother who still hadn't visited even once, about fear, always about fear. But they'd figured it out, or they were figuring it out, present tense, ongoing. Declan had been at every appointment, every single one. He'd seen the ultrasounds at 12 weeks, 16 weeks, 20 weeks, had held her hand when they found out it was a girl, had cried, actually cried, when the doctor said everything looked healthy. He'd gone with her to birthing classes at the hospital on Potrero, the two of them sitting on mats that smelled like disinfectant, learning how to breathe through contractions. He'd been terrible at it. Made jokes to cover how scared he was. She'd loved him for it anyway. He'd read the pregnancy book, cover to cover. Highlighted sections, asked questions, worried about things she hadn't even thought to worry about. He'd shown up. Every day. In small ways and big ways, he'd shown up. Work had been complicated. People talked, of course they talked. The CEO dating, living with, an analyst in admin. The power dynamics, the optics. Hadley had offered to quit. He'd refused to let her. They'd gone to HR together. Disclosed the relationship. Dealt with the paperwork and the awkward conversations and the sideways looks from people who thought they had opinions about other people's lives. She'd gotten promoted 2 months ago. Not because of Declan. He'd recused himself entirely from the decision, but because she was good at her job and the new operations manager had noticed. People still talked. Probably always would. She'd stopped caring. The front door opened. "I got the tacos," Declan called. "And the woman at the truck said to tell you congratulations, and also that you have good taste in food." Hadley smiled, tried to stand up from the rocking chair. Failed. Tried again. Declan appeared in the doorway of the nursery, paper bag in hand, looking at her, struggling. "Need help?" "I've got it." She didn't have it. He set the bag down, walked over, held out his hand. She took it, let him pull her up. Stood there for a second, off balance and huge and feeling like a whale. "You okay?" he asked. "I'm enormous." "You're pregnant." "Same thing." "Not even close." He kissed her forehead. Quick, casual, the kind of gesture that had become normal in the last few months. Easy affection. Small touches. She leaned into him, or tried to. The baby was in the way. "She's kicking again," Hadley said. "Yeah?" Declan put his hand on her stomach. Waited. The baby kicked, right under his palm. His face did that thing it always did. Wonder and fear mixed together. Still weird. That there's a person in there. That we made a person. We definitely made a person. They stood there for a moment, his hand on her stomach, her hand over his, the baby moving between them. "I'm scared," he said quietly. "I know. Like, really scared. Me too. But we're doing this. We're doing this." He kissed her again. Longer this time. Then pulled back, grabbed her hand, led her to the kitchen. The tacos were good. Al pastor. The kind that dripped grease and was probably terrible for her, but tasted like heaven. They ate at the small table by the window, the one that barely fit 2 people and definitely wouldn't fit 3 once they added a high chair. They'd figure it out. "My mom called," Hadley said between bites. "Yeah? She wants to visit, after the baby comes. That's good, right? Maybe. I don't know." She wiped salsa from her chin. She said some stuff about wanting to be a better grandmother than she was a mother. "How do you feel about that?" Hadley thought about it. 6 months ago she would have been angry, bitter. Now she just felt tired. "I feel like people deserve second chances," she said, "even when they don't deserve them." Declan nodded, didn't push it. That was another thing she'd learned about him. He knew when to push and when to just sit with something. Later that night, after the tacos were gone and the dishes were washed and the sun was finally setting over the city, Hadley stood in the nursery again. Everything was ready. Clothes folded in drawers, diapers stacked on the changing table, a mobile hanging over the crib, tiny stars that were supposed to glow in the dark, but she hadn't tested yet. Ready as they could be anyway. Declan came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her, or tried to, the baby making it logistically complicated. "You good?" he asked. "I'm terrified." "Same. But also excited." "Yeah. Also that." She leaned back against him, felt his heartbeat through his shirt. Steady, reliable. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For showing up. I should be thanking you." "For what?" "For letting me." She turned in his arms. Awkward, clumsy, but she managed it. Looked up at him. Saw the man who'd avoided her in hallways 6 months ago. Who'd offered her money instead of showing up. Who'd been so scared he'd almost run. He was still scared. But he'd stayed anyway. "We're going to be okay," she said. "You think?" "I think we have to be. So we will be." He smiled, kissed her, soft and sweet and full of promises neither of them knew if they could keep. But they'd try, that was enough. 2 weeks later, at 3 in the morning on a Saturday, Hadley's water broke. She was standing in the kitchen trying to decide if she wanted toast or cereal, when it happened. Just this sudden gush of water soaking through her pajama pants, pooling on the floor. Declan. He appeared in the doorway, half asleep, hair sticking up, saw the water, went pale. "Oh, God. It's time. Oh, God." "Declan." "Right. Okay. Hospital. We need to go to the hospital." He grabbed his phone, dropped it, picked it up. "Where's the bag?" "We packed a bag." "It's by the door." "Right, the door, okay." He was panicking, completely panicking. She would have laughed if she wasn't having her first contraction. It hurt. A lot. "Okay," she breathed. "Okay, we're doing this. We're doing this." They made it to the hospital. Barely. Declan ran 2 red lights and almost hit a parked car. Hadley didn't mention it. She was too busy breathing through contractions that were coming faster than they were supposed to. The hospital was chaos. Bright lights and nurses and people asking questions she couldn't focus on answering. Declan held her hand through all of it. Didn't let go, not once. Labor was 14 hours. 14 hours of pain and exhaustion and moments where Hadley was certain she couldn't do it. Couldn't keep going, but she did. And at 5:47 p.m. on a Saturday in early June, their daughter was born. Small and red and screaming. Perfect. The nurse placed her on Hadley's chest, warm and slippery and real. So real. "Hi," Hadley whispered. "Hi, baby." She looked at Declan. He was crying, not hiding it, just crying, staring at their daughter like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. "We made that," he said. "We did. She's perfect. She is." The baby stopped crying, opened her eyes, dark and unfocused, looking at nothing and everything. "What's her name?" the nurse asked. They'd argued about names for weeks, couldn't agree, had a running list of maybes, and almost that kept getting longer but never getting shorter. Hadley looked at Declan. He looked at her. "Maren," Hadley said. "Her name is Maren." Declan nodded. "Maren Shaw." "Maren Pierce Shaw," Hadley corrected. He smiled. Maren Pierce Shaw. The nurse wrote it down, made it official, made it real. 3 days later, they brought Maren home. The apartment felt different with her in it. Smaller, fuller, like all the empty spaces had suddenly found their purpose. Declan was terrified of everything. Terrified of holding her wrong, of dropping her, of the soft spot on her head, of the way she was so small and fragile and completely dependent on them not to screw it up. "What if I'm bad at this?" he asked at 2 in the morning, holding Maren while she slept, afraid to move. "Then you get better at it," Hadley said. "What if I don't?" "You will." "How do you know?" "Because you showed up. That's the hardest part. The rest we'll figure out." And they did. Slowly, messily, one day at a time. Maren cried. A lot. They took turns walking her around the apartment at 3 a.m., bouncing and shushing and Googling, "Why won't my baby stop crying?" on their phones. They were exhausted. Both of them. The kind of exhausted that made everything harder than it needed to be. But they were doing it. Together. 1 month in, Hadley woke up to find Declan already awake, sitting in the rocking chair with Maren asleep on his chest. The sun was coming up, grey light filtering through the windows, the fog starting to lift. He was crying, quietly. Just tears running down his face while he held their daughter. "Hey," Hadley said softly. "You okay?" He looked up, smiled. "Yeah, I'm good. Just..." He looked down at Maren. "I was thinking about my dad, about how he missed all of this, and I don't understand how you miss this." Hadley got up, walked over, sat on the arm of the chair. "You're not him," she said. "I know. You're here, you're showing up. That's what matters. I want to be good at this. You are good at this. I dropped a bottle yesterday. Everyone drops bottles. I forgot to burp her and she spit up everywhere. That's what babies do." He laughed, soft and tired and full of love. "We made a person," he said. "We did. And she's perfect." "She is." Maren stirred, made a small sound, settled back to sleep. Declan kissed the top of her head. Hadley put her hand on his shoulder, and they sat there, watching the sun come up over the city, their daughter asleep between them, imperfect, exhausted, scared, but together. And that was everything. Final message. Sometimes love doesn't arrive the way we expect it to. Sometimes it comes wrapped in fear and uncertainty and mistakes we can't take back. Sometimes it takes two people who don't know what they're doing and asks them to figure it out anyway. But showing up, even when it's terrifying, even when you don't have the answers, that's what matters. Not perfection, not having it all figured out. Just showing up every day for each other, for the life you're building together, and trusting that love isn't something you find, it's something you choose every single day. What moment in Hadley and Declan's story resonated most with you? The struggle, the fear, or the choice to keep showing up despite everything? Your participation means a lot to the channel. Please share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment your thoughts. Your participation is very important to us. See you next time.